guys. Welcome to week 8 of Step by Step Writing a Book with Me. If you missed any of the previous videos, don't worry, you can subscribe down below, or you can just go back to the Step by Step playlist and watch them from beginning to end. What we're doing is we're writing a book from beginning to end with me, and you're seeing the whole process that I go through as I write a book. Now, not every week am I just going to be throwing words up on the page, because there's a lot of time that happens that is planning. I did another video about this. It's one of my shorts about how I don't write every day, and I don't believe you should write every day, because there's a lot that has to happen in the back of your mind to get it right. And what I wanted to talk about this week is plot. And I know I talk about that a lot, but this is the thing that trips up most writers. And if you're not getting the plot correct, then you're going to have a bad framework for your book. And when you have a bad framework, like with a house, things will fall apart in the middle if you don't get the plot correct. And a lot of people find this when they start sending their finished book out to beta readers, or they just, throw it up on Amazon without really getting a lot of feedback on it. And they'll find that people are saying, I don't understand why I should care about this character, or the plot's confusing to me, or I read all these scenes that didn't seem to have anything to do with the plot. And what happened is that they had the framework, but it was very loosey-goosey. And then they just kind of wrote and, went in all these different directions. And the scenes that they had did not continue to increase the tension, raise the stakes, propel the plot. My number one piece of advice to you that you should use all the time, maybe write it out, tape it above your monitor, keep it there in front of you, is that every word in your book, every single word of dialogue, of description, of setting, of everything should propel the plot forward. There are no wasted words. We don't have a lot of time on this earth, right? I'm not going to waste any of the reader's time with things that they don't need to know. And on the character viewpoint, the character is not going to be noticing or thinking about things that have nothing to do with their goal. So don't waste that space by putting in words that don't need to be there. So that's great advice, right? But how do you put it into practice? What you do is you make sure that you've really got that plot narrowed down early on in the book. For me, that usually happens around chapter 3. I don't have it right away in the first 2 chapters or so, because I'm still getting to know the characters. I liken it a lot to meeting new neighbors. So as I'm writing chapter 2 for the book that I'm doing with you guys, I'm starting to get to know my character, and she's starting to come alive a little bit more, and I'm figuring her out. And at the same time, I'm thinking about other things. Like right now, this book is in the first person point of view with a single protagonist. That means there's one point of view through the whole book and only one main character. And I'm debating whether I want to do a second character in maybe sort of a different point of view, maybe do that in third person point of view, and maybe in a different place. I'm not going to tell you any more than that because I'm still debating it. And if I do, it will add a whole other dimension to this book. And I'm not 100% sure I want to go in that direction yet. So what I'm doing is basically thinking about it. I'm sketching out the plot. I'm taking notes. I'm trying to figure it out. So if you are early in your book process, chapters 1, 2, 3, and you are trying to figure out where to go next, let's talk about that. You want to start very simply: the goal, the motivation, and the conflict. This is something that we've talked about in a previous video, and it's also going to be my July class. So if you haven't signed up for that, we're going to go into goal, motivation, and conflict in a lot of depth in that class, more so than I will in like a 5-minute video here. But the goal, motivation, and conflict are the 3 things that fuel your plot. They are basically the framework of everything that you're going to write about. And if it doesn't fit into that goal, motivation, and conflict, it doesn't need to be there. So the character, as I said last week, may have a goal when the beginning of the book starts that changes when the trouble comes along, when whatever life-changing event happens that sends them in a new direction. But for the majority of the book, they have a goal, motivation, and conflict that refers back to the trouble that started. So like in Taken, when Liam Neeson's daughter is kidnapped, that sets up a whole new goal for him. Before, he wanted to get back together with his family and kind of mend some fences. When his daughter is kidnapped, boom, that guy is on a plane. He is looking for her. He is doing all of these things that feed into finding his daughter. He does not deviate from that plan in any of the scenes in Taken, because the motivation to save his daughter is really, really strong. And that's what I mean about your plot not deviating from the framework that you have. So every scene that Liam Neeson is in feeds into this goal of finding his daughter until he actually achieves it. The conflict that he has is a whole bunch of bad guys, and there's a language barrier and a foreign country and all of these things, and he has very few clues to go on. But he is a man with a certain set of skills, right? And he does figure it out and find her. If you haven't seen it, sorry, spoiler alert. But every single thing in that movie feeds into his overall goal, motivation, conflict. And then if you look at the internal plot, there's also a goal, motivation, and conflict there. For Liam Neeson, he has a goal of getting back together with his family, his wife and his kid, and his motivation is because he knows that he screwed it up through his work, through being gone all the time. The conflict is he's already divorced. Wife has kind of moved on. Daughter doesn't want anything to do with him. And plus she's missing. So that's a pretty big conflict. You can't get back together without her. So he's trying at the same time that he's trying to rescue his daughter to kind of rebuild these fences that he has torn down. And he faces a lot of struggle with that because A, his daughter is missing, and B, the wife is very angry with him for a lot of the things that he has done in the past. So that internal plot is running at the same time. And as he begins to get closer to his daughter, that's when he begins to think like her. He begins to empathize with her. And that is what ultimately gives him the key to being able to find her. In Taken, that scene where he takes care of that other girl that has his daughter's jacket, it becomes twofold. It's not just about finding his daughter, it's also about rescuing this girl and being a little bit of a father to her for a little while and taking care of her. Because if all he wanted was answers, he would have just shook her awake and gotten them. Instead, he sort of took care of her for a little while to help her back to health and get her out of that situation. So you start to see Liam Neeson's growth internally as a character at that point in the movie. So I want you to come back to your plot, and I want you to look at where you are. I don't care if you're in chapter 1 or chapter 21. I want you to write down my character's goal, motivation, and conflict. The goal is what they want, the motivation is the why, and the conflict is all the buts that get in the way. And I'm talking about like roadblocks and things like that that get in the way of what they want. The external goal should be something physical, tangible, something they can go after and get. For Liam Neeson, it's find his daughter. Then I want you to take a step back, maybe look at videos 6 and 7 if you've missed week 6 and 7, because they talk about this in more depth, and figure out the character's internal goal, motivation, and conflict. What do they want internally, emotionally? Do they want to be redeemed? Do they want to have forgiveness? Do they want to become a better person? Do they want to make things up to the people they love? Whatever inner insecurities your character has, make a list of those and then figure out which is the most important to them and why. So, like a character that wants to be forgiven, maybe she feels guilty for her sister's death. And the conflict is that her mother refuses to forgive her because she never got over it. So that is going to create a continual, push and pull dynamic in the book because she's trying to get something that her mother's refusing to give. So go back and look at your character emotionally and how does that tie in with the external goal? How does what they want internally, emotionally manifest in the external goal? So that's a little bit deeper, bigger concept, something I will definitely talk about a lot more in depth in the class because it takes a little bit more to explain. But basically, those two things should go together. Just like I said, the framework is always there and nothing should deviate from that. Every single word in the book should feed into that plot. So how does their emotional needs feed in with their physical needs? And how do those two things come together? I want you to think about that. And maybe if you have a question on that, ask it or DM me or just drop a thumbs up if you want me to talk about more of that. Because understanding this concept is really going to make your life a lot easier when it comes to writing your book. And that's what I'm doing right now on paper with the book that I'm working on for you guys. I am going through and putting those two concepts together so that I can make sure that everything I write going forward feeds into that plot and works for that story. Look for the rest of the videos in this series in the playlist on Step by Step, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of them, because I would really like to show you how to take a book from beginning to end and give you all of those insider secrets of how somebody who's done it a bunch of times continues to do it. Here's my goal, motivation, and conflict with this video series. My goal is to give you the tools that you need, because I don't want to see anybody else have to write 10 books in 8 years like I did before they finally have success. But there's always a conflict about getting the word out, getting to people, and hopefully explaining it in a way that you understand. But internally, emotionally, my goal is to always put a hand out to the writers that are coming up behind me, because I don't ever want to reach the top and be up there alone. So I really want to encourage you and motivate you because I know how hard this can be and how easy it can be to give up because it's a really difficult industry. And writing anything emotional that comes from your heart can be really scary to put out in the world because, people can give 1-star reviews or you can get rejected. So I understand that. And I understand all of those tendencies that keep you from plowing forward on your book. And that is why I started this channel. And that is why I'm trying to encourage you and teach you and show you hands on exactly how to do this.
With it. You don't need to water it.